What happens when charm turns condescending and composure becomes the last line of defense? On the Tamron Hall show, what began as a polished interview about philanthropy spiraled into a televised storm between grace and ego. Meghan Markle walked in expecting admiration and walked out facing the one thing she never prepared for: accountability. The studio glowed under soft gold lighting. Cameras glided silently, capturing the polished set. Deep blues, amber highlights, and the poised presence of Tamron Hall herself, seated with her trademark elegance. It was a morning like any other, except today. Meghan Markle was in the chair across from her. The audience buzzed with excitement, phones raised discreetly to capture the moment. Meghan entered the studio, every inch the image of calm sophistication. But the calm was deceptive. Her eyes betrayed a gleam, the kind that suggested she wasn't here just to talk. Tamron welcomed her with a smile that could steady a storm. "Meghan, thank you for joining us," she began warmly. "It's been quite a year for you, from new projects to new headlines. Before we dive in, how are you and Harry doing?" A simple question, a gentle opening, but Meghan's smile tightened, sharp at the edges. "We're thriving, Tamron," she said, her voice smooth but cool. "I just find it exhausting how people feel entitled to dissect my personal life. Maybe if they focused on their own relationships, they'd be happier." A few uneasy chuckles rippled through the crowd. Tamron didn't flinch. "I understand," she replied evenly, "though some might say that by sharing so much publicly, curiosity is a natural result." Meghan leaned back, folding one leg over the other, her tone growing firm. "I don't see it as sharing. I see it as correcting lies. We've been attacked unfairly. We're just defending ourselves," which, by the way, anyone in our position would do. Polite applause followed, hesitant, careful. Tamron nodded slowly. "Yet," she continued softly, "the conversation about the royal family never seems to end. Why do you think that is?" Meghan's lips curled into a smirk. "Because people can't let go," she said. "Especially the media. They're obsessed. Harry and I have moved on, but it seems everyone else hasn't." Tamron's fingers tapped lightly against her cue cards. "You mean the press or the public?" "Both," Meghan replied sharply. "Let's be honest. People love to hate. They'd rather project their own frustrations onto others than admit the world needs change, and I represent that change." The audience's reaction was mixed. Some clapped, others exchanged uneasy looks. Tamron, unshaken, turned a page on her notes. "Let's talk about that change," she said. "You've spoken about modernizing institutions. Do you believe the monarchy failed to modernize?" "Completely," Meghan said, without hesitation. "It's a system built on outdated ideals. I tried to bring progress, compassion, diversity, but they weren't ready. The truth is, the problem wasn't me. It was them." Her tone carried an unmistakable edge, slicing through the polished decorum of the set. Gasps echoed faintly from the audience. Tamron's voice stayed calm. "That's a strong statement." "It's an honest one," Meghan countered. "People don't like honesty. They prefer fairy tales. But I don't play along." The applause was half-hearted this time, a smattering of uncertain support. Tamron's eyes, however, gleamed, not with hostility, but recognition. She'd interviewed powerful people before, but few came in already fighting ghosts. Tamron shifted gears. "Let's go back for a moment. You had a successful acting career before royalty. Do you ever miss it?" Meghan laughed softly, a dismissive sound. "Acting? No, I've outgrown that. I'm doing work that actually matters now. It's fulfilling to do something real." Her tone lingered just long enough for the audience to catch its implication. Acting wasn't real, and neither were the people still doing it. Tamron's expression didn't waver. "I imagine many of your fans from that time might feel differently," Tamron said, voice even. "Do you think that earlier visibility helped shape your current platform?" "Not at all," Meghan replied quickly. "My platform is built on who I am, not on some TV show I did years ago. That's irrelevant now." A hum ran through the room. There it was, the first glimpse of arrogance behind the charm. Tamron leaned slightly forward, her tone soft but laced with subtle precision. "Well," she said, "our viewers might have their own thoughts on that." the studio filled with an awkward mix of applause and whispers. Meghan's eyes flickered, irritation disguised behind her well-practiced smile. When Tamron next spoke, her voice carried a deliberate calm, the kind born of restraint. "Let's touch on something more personal, if you don't mind. Your relationship with the late Queen was often described as cordial. How would you characterize it now?" For a moment, Meghan's face softened, then hardened again. "I respected her," she said, "but respect only goes so far when the entire institution refuses to do the right thing. People like to pretend our relationship was special, but the truth is, she could have done more. She didn't." Gasps swept through the audience like a wave. Even for an American crowd, criticism of the Queen carried weight. Tamron didn't blink. "Some might say that's a harsh view," she said gently, "especially given the affection the public saw between you." Meghan's reply came quick and sharp. "With all due respect, Tamron, you weren't there. It's easy to speculate from the outside." Tamron's lips pressed together, the faintest sign of tension, but her tone stayed even. "I understand, Meghan, but you've shared your version publicly many times. When someone shares their story, it becomes part of a larger conversation." Meghan let out a low scoff. "Ah, the conversation. That's the media's favorite excuse. Maybe it's time journalists stop pretending they're analysts and start listening instead." The air in Studio 6A thickened. The audience murmured. Tamron gave a small, controlled smile, the kind that warned of precision beneath restraint. "Well," she said calmly, "that's certainly one perspective." The cameras caught it all: Meghan's smirk, Tamron's poise, and the invisible wall forming between them. By the time the first commercial break rolled around, one truth was clear to everyone watching. This wasn't going to be another polite morning interview. It was about to become a battle of composure, and one of them was already losing ground. The air in the studio had changed. Gone was the pleasant hum of audience excitement, replaced by the quiet tension of people realizing they were witnessing something unravel live. The cameras rolled, capturing every twitch, every pause, every glance that lingered a second too long. Meghan sat with her chin slightly raised, her arms folded loosely across her lap, a picture of composed defiance. Tamron, by contrast, was still and centered, her posture unyielding but graceful. To the casual viewer, it still looked like an interview. To everyone in the room, it was something else entirely, a duel wrapped in civility. Tamron began carefully. "Meghan, you've often described your journey as one of self-liberation, breaking free from a system that constrained you. Yet, many would say that you continue to engage deeply with that same system. Your podcast, your documentary, your book, they all revolve around the monarchy. Why revisit what you've left behind?" Meghan's smile thinned. "Because people keep asking about it," she said coolly. "I can't control the obsession. I can only respond to it. Maybe it says more about the public than it does about me." Tamron's tone remained warm, but there was a quiet steel beneath it. "But you do have control over what stories you tell, don't you? Over what you choose to highlight?" Meghan tilted her head, eyes narrowing slightly. "I think it's fascinating how journalists love to frame that as my choice, when really I'm just reclaiming a narrative that was stolen from me. Maybe the media should stop pretending to be gatekeepers of truth." A few gasps and murmurs rippled through the audience. Tamron's lips curved into a polite, almost sympathetic smile. "Gatekeepers? Perhaps not," she replied. "But we are questioners. It's part of the job." Meghan leaned forward, her tone sharpening. "No, Tamron, what journalists do isn't questioning. It's dissecting, manipulating, twisting words for headlines. I've lived it. I've been vilified by people like you who claim to seek truth." The audience stirred, uneasy. Tamron blinked once, calm, collected. "I'm sorry you feel that way," she said softly, "but I'd like to think this conversation is about clarity, not vilification." Meghan gave a light laugh, though it sounded brittle. "Clarity or control? Let's not pretend this isn't about entertainment. You ask me here for ratings, then act surprised when I refuse to play nice." The crowd gasped again. Tamron's eyes flickered, but her tone didn't waver. "Meghan, I invited you here because you have a message to share. But the responsibility of that message, how it's received, also belongs to you." Meghan crossed her legs with a sharp movement. I don't need lectures on responsibility from someone who profits off controversy. I'm here to talk about my foundation, not to be psychoanalyzed on morning television. Tamron smiled faintly. And yet, here we are. The response drew a low murmur from the audience, half shock, half admiration. Meghan's smile vanished. Excuse me? Tamron met her gaze, calm as ever. Here we are, two women having an honest conversation. Isn't that what you said you wanted? Meghan's laugh this time was sharp, defensive. Honest conversation? I'm used to real journalists, the kind who don't disguise judgment as curiosity. Now the audience fell completely silent. Tamron took a breath. The smile was still there, but the warmth behind it had dimmed. You seem to think accountability is judgment, she said slowly. But there's a difference. Meghan shrugged dismissively. Call it what you like. I've dealt with enough accountability to last a lifetime, usually from people who've never been under a microscope themselves. Tamron's gaze didn't shift. True, but the microscope doesn't invent what it magnifies. It was subtle, a single line, delivered in the same tone Tamron used to ask about charity work or new book releases, but it landed like a thunderclap. The audience audibly gasped, then applauded. Meghan froze, her mouth slightly open, then the mask returned. Well, I see we're going for sound bites now. Good for you, Tamron. Tamron offered a serene nod. No sound bites, just perspective. Meghan's eyes flicked toward the cameras, then back. Her voice lowered, but the venom in it was unmistakable. You're very good at playing the composed journalist, but let's not pretend you're not enjoying this. Tamron's voice softened. Enjoying this? No, but I do believe in balance, giving guests room to speak while also asking the questions viewers deserve to hear. And who decides what they deserve? Meghan shot back. You, the audience, the same people who mock me for living authentically? Tamron's patience was visible, taut, stretched, but holding. Meghan, I don't think authenticity needs defending, but when authenticity becomes performance, people start to wonder which parts are real. That did it. Meghan's face hardened completely. You don't get to question my authenticity. You don't know me. I know your words, Tamron replied evenly, the ones you've chosen to share. The audience broke into soft applause, sensing the shift in energy. The quiet tug of war had now become visible. Meghan straightened in her seat. You're twisting everything I say, she said tightly. Typical. I come on your show to talk about something meaningful, and you turn it into tabloid theater. Maybe next time you should just invite my critics instead. Tamron folded her hands, unbothered. You've faced criticism before. You said it made you stronger. I'm giving you the opportunity to demonstrate that strength. The silence after that line was electric. The camera zoomed slightly closer. Meghan's clenched jaw, Tamron's unwavering gaze. Finally, Meghan exhaled sharply, forcing a smile. I think we both know strength looks different on me, Tamron, but not everyone can handle that. Tamron's smile returned, calm, controlled, dangerous. You might be right, not everyone can handle it. A brief pause, then she leaned forward, eyes locked on Meghan's. But sometimes, Meghan, it's not strength people struggle with, it's arrogance. The words dropped like glass onto marble. The crowd gasped. Meghan blinked, the confidence in her face flickering for the first time. Before she could respond, Tamron turned to the camera with perfect timing. We'll be right back after the break. The studio lights dimmed, but the tension stayed. Meghan stared daggers at Tamron, whispering something under her breath. Tamron didn't react. She simply picked up her cue cards and straightened them with quiet precision, because the break might have paused the broadcast. But the battle was far from over. When the cameras returned, the air in Studio 6A felt heavier, dense with unspoken friction. Even through the screen, viewers could feel it. The calm before something inevitable. Tamron smiled, but her eyes held a quiet warning. Meghan's expression, however, was pure defiance. That perfectly trained royal posture, chin high, smile fixed, but her eyes were sharp and cold. Welcome back, Tamron said smoothly. We're here with Meghan Markle, discussing her journey, her work, and her truth. At that last word, Meghan's lips twitched, almost into a smirk. My truth, she repeated. Yes, Tamron, Because for years, others tried to tell their version of my life. I think it's about time people started listening to me. Tamron nodded slightly. And many have, through your interviews, your book, and your documentary series. But some viewers wonder, if you've already told your truth so many times, why do you still feel unheard? It was a calm, fair question, but Meghan's expression changed instantly. I don't feel unheard, she said flatly. I feel misrepresented, and that's not my fault. That's the media's obsession with distorting strong women who speak their minds. Tamron's tone stayed gentle. But don't you think at some point, repetition starts to sound like justification? Meghan blinked, slowly, then leaned forward. Excuse me? Tamron clarified, still measured. You've spoken about liberation and moving forward, yet much of your public narrative circles back to the same pain, the same institutions, the same comparisons. Some viewers have wondered if that's really moving forward, the audience murmured quietly. Meghan gave a sharp laugh, forced and brittle. Well, Tamron, that's because people are uncomfortable with women who own their trauma. It's easier to say move on than to admit society failed you. Perhaps, Tamron said evenly, or perhaps people just want to see what healing looks like. There was a pause, long, tense. You could hear the faint buzz of the lights above. Meghan tilted her head, her tone suddenly patronizing. Tamron, I get that you're trying to be insightful, but I don't think you understand what it's like to be hunted, dissected, and turned into a spectacle. The audience gasped softly. Tamron didn't move. Her stillness spoke volumes. I might understand more than you think, she said quietly. Being a black woman in media comes with its own share of scrutiny. For a fleeting second, the power dynamic shifted. Meghan blinked, caught off guard, then smirked again. Well, she said with a practiced sweetness, I suppose that's true for some, but let's be honest, you chose this. I didn't choose what happened to me. Tamron's fingers curled slightly against her cue cards. Her jaw tightened, imperceptibly to the audience, but visible to the crew. Still, her tone remained elegant. No one chooses cruelty, she said. But how we respond to it, that is a choice. The audience clapped softly as if releasing tension. Meghan didn't clap. She crossed her arms, lips pressed tight. See, Meghan said finally, her voice rising just slightly. This is what always happens. I sit down for a thoughtful conversation, and it turns into another interrogation. You think because you smile when you ask questions, that makes it kind. It doesn't. Tamron leaned in, her eyes steady, unblinking. Meghan, my goal isn't to interrogate, it's to understand. But you keep turning every question into a confrontation. Meghan's reply came sharp as a whip. Because that's what it is, she snapped. You sit there pretending to be objective, but you're no different than the tabloids. At least they're honest about being invasive. The crowd murmured. In surprise, a low wave of whispers and gasps. Tamron inhaled slowly through her nose. Meghan, she said in a voice now noticeably cooler, I've spent decades in journalism. I've interviewed presidents, activists, survivors. I ask hard questions because that's what the audience deserves. It's not an attack, it's accountability. Accountability, Meghan repeated mockingly. That word again. You people love that one. It's just code for, let's tear her down politely. Tamron smiled, not kindly, but with a weary patience. If being asked questions tears someone down, maybe the foundation wasn't as strong as they thought. The studio broke into stunned applause. Tamron didn't even look at the audience. Her gaze stayed locked on Meghan. Meghan's voice shook slightly now. Whether from anger or pride, it was hard to tell. I can't believe how disrespectful this is. I came here for a meaningful discussion, and you've turned it into a spectacle. Tamron's reply was calm, quiet, devastating. I didn't turn it into anything, Meghan. You did. The words cut like silk, soft but precise. Meghan stared at her, eyes blazing. You think you can humiliate me on national television and get away with it? Do you know who I am? Tamron's lips parted slightly, her expression neutral. But there was a spark in her eyes now. The mask of professionalism was beginning to strain. I do, she said slowly. You're someone who says she wants to be treated like everyone else, but can't handle being questioned like everyone else. Gasps, audible collective gasps. The audience froze. Nobody dared move. Meghan's cheeks flushed red. "You're twisting my words." "I'm reflecting them," Tamron replied simply. For a few seconds, there was silence. Thick, suffocating silence. Then Meghan leaned back, her smile returning. But this time, it was brittle, venomous. "You know, Tamron, I expected better from you. I thought you'd be more understanding. But I guess success changes people. Some of us rise above it. Others hide behind cue cards." Tamron's composure wavered, not fully, but enough for the audience to feel it. Her nostrils flared subtly as she set her cards down, very slowly. "Success doesn't change people," she said quietly. "It reveals them." A murmur ran through the crowd. Tamron straightened her back, folding her hands. "Let's take another short break," she said. But her tone was different now, colder, controlled. The camera panned out, catching Meghan's smirk and Tamron's icy calm in the same frame. Because everyone in that studio, from the crew to the audience, knew one thing for certain. When they came back from this break, someone wasn't walking out with their reputation intact. When the broadcast returned from its final commercial break, the mood was unmistakably different. Gone was the soft, conversational tone that had opened the morning. Now there was an almost electric stillness in the air. The audience sat frozen, the crew stiff behind their cameras. Everyone could sense that something was about to snap. Tamron sat poised, her notes untouched. Meghan leaned back in her chair, chin lifted, fingers tapping impatiently against her armrest. The polite veneer of civility had worn thin, replaced by something raw and brittle. Tamron began carefully, her voice steady as glass. "Before the break, we were talking about accountability and your perspective on how the media has treated you. I'd like to take this moment to ask something broader." Meghan gave a sharp, humorless laugh. "Oh, I'm sure you would." Tamron didn't react. "Many people," she continued, "admire your advocacy and humanitarian work. But there's also a perception, fair or not, that you often frame criticism as persecution. Do you think that perception comes from misunderstanding or from the way you respond to it?" The question hung in the air like a held breath. Meghan's eyes widened slightly before narrowing again. "You really think that's a fair question, Tamron? Or are you just trying to get your viral clip?" Gasps rippled through the studio. Tamron inhaled slowly, the sound barely audible through her mic. Her composure was still there, but a faint crack had begun to show. "I ask the same kind of questions to everyone who sits in that chair," Tamron replied calmly. "You're not being singled out." Meghan laughed again, louder this time. "Please, don't insult my intelligence. You invited me here to poke, to prod, to get your moment. Because that's what you people do. You build women up and then tear them down for entertainment." Tamron leaned slightly forward. "You keep saying you people. Do you mean journalists, women, or anyone who challenges you?" The audience murmured, a low wave of tension sweeping through. Meghan didn't answer. Instead, she turned to the crowd and said, "See, this is exactly what I'm talking about. Everything becomes a trap, a headline. Meghan loses it again. That's what you want, isn't it?" Tamron's tone remained soft, but her gaze sharpened. "No, Meghan. What I want is honesty." "Honesty?" Meghan repeated, incredulous. "You want honesty? Fine. Here's honesty. The only reason you and every other network even care about me is because of who I married. Not because of what I do, not because of my work, because it sells." Tamron nodded slightly. "You might be right, but doesn't that also mean you've benefited from it?" The silence that followed was suffocating. Meghan's mouth opened, but no words came out. Tamron pressed gently, the velvet glove concealing iron beneath. "You've written books, launched shows, signed multi-million-dollar deals. Isn't it fair to say you've turned your story, your pain, into a brand?" Meghan's jaw dropped. "How dare you?" she hissed. Tamron's tone didn't change. "I'm asking what people already ask, out loud. I'm giving you a chance to answer it." Meghan's voice rose now, no longer polished or measured. "You think I owe anyone an explanation? I survived, I endured, and yes, I built something from it. That's called resilience. You should try it sometime." The audience gasped again, and a few boos erupted from the back row. Tamron blinked once, slowly, before setting her pen down. Her hand no longer trembled. It was steady, deliberate. "Resilience," she said evenly. "That's an admirable word, but resilience doesn't give anyone the right to belittle others." "I'm not belittling anyone," Meghan snapped. "I'm defending myself." Tamron's calm cracked, not in volume, but in precision. Her voice dropped lower, firmer. "Defending yourself is one thing, Meghan. Attacking everyone who asks a question, that's something else entirely." Meghan leaned forward, her tone dripping with condescension. "You don't get it, Tamron. You never will. You haven't lived my life. You haven't been torn apart by tabloids, betrayed by people you trusted, followed everywhere you go." Tamron's voice was measured. "You're right, I haven't lived your life. But I've faced my own battles. I've worked for everything I have, and I've never used my pain as currency." That line hit like thunder. The audience erupted into applause. Meghan's face flushed crimson. She forced a smile, but it faltered instantly. "Oh, so now I'm profiting off my trauma?" she spat. "Is that the angle? The strong black journalist calling out the spoiled duchess? Congratulations, Tamron. That'll get you clicks." Tamron's expression hardened. The smile was gone now. Her tone turned from composed to commanding. "Don't twist this into a narrative about race or rivalry. This is about behavior. Yours." Meghan scoffed audibly. "You're unbelievable. You pretend to uplift women, but you're tearing one down right now." Tamron leaned forward, voice low but cutting. "Uplifting women doesn't mean enabling arrogance. It means holding everyone, including women like you, accountable for their words." The audience broke into applause again, louder this time. Meghan's face contorted, anger overtaking composure. "I don't have to sit here and take this," she snapped, ripping the mic off her collar. Tamron's tone was final, calm, unshakable now. "Then don't." The studio froze. Meghan blinked, as if she hadn't expected the invitation. Tamron stood, her posture regal, her voice clear. "If you feel this space isn't serving you, you're free to leave. But while you're in my studio, you will treat people with respect, including me." The room went utterly silent. Meghan stood slowly, her chair scraping harshly, poised against the floor. "You'll regret this," she said, voice trembling with rage. "You just ended your career moment, Tamron." Tamron met her gaze, eyes steady. "No, Meghan, you just ended yours." The audience gasped, then applauded, loud and thunderous, echoing through the studio. Meghan froze for a split second, glaring at Tamron before storming off set. The cameras caught every second of her exit, the sharp clicks of her heels, the tension radiating in her wake. Tamron stood perfectly still until the sound of the studio doors closing faded. Then she exhaled softly, turned to the camera, and spoke, steady, controlled, professional to the very end. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice even, "you've just witnessed something very real. This show is about open dialogue, but respect must go both ways. I don't silence guests. I expect conversation, not confrontation." She paused. The audience was silent again, hanging on every word. "We live in a time," Tamron continued, "where celebrity often overshadows character, where charisma is confused with credibility, but no title, no fame, no PR team can replace basic decency." Applause began to swell, filling the room. "And that," she said softly, "is the truth." The screen faded to black as Tamron stood tall, the applause echoing long after Meghan had gone. "Now, we want to hear from you. Do you think Tamron Hall went too far? Or was this the kind of truth television's been missing? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We read every single one. Before you go, make sure to hit that like button, smash subscribe, and turn on the bell icon, because next week, we're diving into another explosive moment, when another celebrity sat down for what was supposed to be just an interview and left in chaos.